Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for the ninth annual National Call of Unity, One Thing Towards Collective Action. I'm Arlene Vassell, Vice President of Programs, Prevention, and Social Change with the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. I am humbled and honored to share this space and time with you all today as we all step away from our very busy schedules to remember and mourn the lives lost due to domestic violence, sexual violence, and other forms of gender-based violence. We also come together to celebrate the resilience and strength of individuals that have survived senseless acts of inhumanity. Today, we also honor the courage and legacy of advocates who toiled before us. We come together to connect with each other in ways to remain strong, inspired, and motivated to move our social justice efforts forward. Today and throughout October, let's be intentional to focus on the power of our individual one things. One Thing is our messaging campaign for Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2018 and beyond. The One Thing messaging campaign was developed by the National Domestic Violence Awareness Project Advisory Group. It's all about moving individuals from awareness to action. It inspires thinking about how individuals can take small steps that will lead to real social change. Domestic violence is a serious public health problem that requires our individual one thing and our collective one things in order to shift destructive beliefs and behaviors that perpetuate gender-based violence. The National Resource Center on Domestic Violence and our collaborative partners stand with individuals and groups who have been degraded, targeted, threatened, or marginalized because they are Native Americans, people of color, immigrants, women, Muslim, LGBTQ, or people with disabilities. We stand with all survivors of domestic and sexual violence, especially those most vulnerable with limited access to services and protection. For all these reasons, we appreciate the tremendous work that you all do every day on behalf of all survivors and their loved ones. And we thank you for joining us as we begin DVAM 2018. NRCDV and our collaborative partners also stand together in celebration of the rich diversity of people in this country and the vitality and strength they bring to our communities and our society. On this call today, you will hear from an amazing and diverse group of individuals, including survivors, advocates, community leaders, national organizations, and government officials that share the same passion and goal of strengthening and transforming efforts to end domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence. Each speaker will share their one thing story of perseverance, healing, resilience, and strength. So now, with pleasure, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Kenya Fairley. She serves as the Acting Director of the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program in the Family and Youth Services Bureau at HHS, which administers the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act. FVPSA is the primary federal funding stream dedicated to the support of emergency shelter and related assistance for victims of domestic violence and their children. Kenya has been a colleague and advocate to end domestic and sexual violence against women and girls, both professionally and as a volunteer for 20 years. Welcome, Kenya.
Hi, thank you, Arlene, for that wonderful introduction. I truly appreciate it, and I'm happy to be here with everyone today. And I want to thank everyone that's listening on the line or watching us via the web. And thank you all for joining us to help kick off National Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2018. As Arlene said, I'm Kenya Fairley, the Acting Director of the Family Violence Prevention and Services Program, located here in the Family and Youth Services Bureau in the Administration for Children and Families at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. FVPSA serves as the human services side of the federal response to ensure that vital emergency and supportive services are available to victims of domestic violence and their dependents, including funding to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Last year, FVPSA-funded programs served over 1.2 million survivors in shelter and through non-shelter services. And the National Domestic Violence Hotline responded to over 300,000 calls, chats, and texts. With grants to states and tribes, PHPSA provides funding for local domestic violence shelter, advocacy, counseling and support groups, culturally specific programming, services to children and youth exposed to domestic violence, and prevention and public awareness efforts, such as what we're doing here today on this call. Community-based programs and partnerships funded by PHPSA are saving the lives of victims and their children every day. We also support the network of state coalitions and national training and technical assistance providers to help states, communities, and tribes deal with the complex social, legal, medical, and housing needs of survivors and their children. Survivors really rely upon advocates in their community and at the state level to know how to effectively get their needs met, to help them pick up the pieces of their lives after experiencing violence, and to prevent further exposure to violence for their children. PHPSA is proud to acknowledge that our one thing for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and really throughout the year, is leveraging resources and partnering across federal agencies to improve supportive services for survivors of domestic violence. We stand together with each of you in solidarity, and we hold space for your healing and resilience here on the federal level. On a more personal note, I come to this work as a child who grew up with domestic violence in my home and in the home of loved ones. As an adult, one thing that has helped me in my healing was learning to truly hear and listen and understand my parents as they reflected on their own lives and shared their own stories. Learning to forgive them for not being perfect human beings has been a very freeing experience for me. And my wish for everyone listening on the call today is that no matter what you may be growing through, that you find a pathway for healing that honors your sense of agency and restores your spirit. So again, thank you all for joining this call today. Thank you for the hard work and dedication that you do every day on behalf of survivors and their children. And thank you for being a part of National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I'm going to pass it back over to Arlene.
Thank you, Kenya. Thank you so much for those words. Our next speaker, Annika Leonard, founder of Priceless, Incite, LLC, an organization dedicated to uplifting the experiences of youth who are impacted by violence through community-based advocacy, intervention, and leadership development. Annika has developed a culturally specific prevention curriculum for Black teen girls to bring about deep, radical, and cultural solutions to healing from violence. Welcome, Annika.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, cool. I am so grateful to be here and so honored to be on this call. And I just want to first honor the land that we're on, what we call America now, that was, of course, stolen from First Nations, who are the descendants and survivors of genocide. And I want to also honor kidnapped and enslaved Africans who experienced tremendous violence at the hands of the people in power in this country, and whose shoulders I stand on. My story didn't start with me, so I also had to recognize the shoulders that I stand on. So folks like Valerie Nash, who was an advocate here in Milwaukee for a while, people like Antonia Van, who runs Asha Project, which was also Asha Family Services at one point. I definitely stand on their shoulders, and I have to give honor to them for seeing a young woman who was an advocate and for pulling her along, when it was, when I didn't even see the leadership in myself, So with all of that honor where it's due, and I know I'm missing people, and that's why I kind of hate to get started, but giving honor where honor is due, right? My story started with violence just as early as my earliest memory was a violent one. And from there, I've experienced child sexual assault, I've experienced date rape, I've experienced teen dating violence, domestic violence, being trafficked across state lines. I've experienced so many forms of violence, and that's without social context, right? Because we're also talking about things like racism and heterosexism and, the intersection of all of those isms that I've experienced and that many survivors experience. I would just like to give my one thing as a direct relationship to all of those things that I just named that I've experienced. And the one thing that I would share with survivors who have experienced any of the things that I've just listed or none of the things that I've just listed, right? That we are experiencing a time. A few weeks ago, I did a webinar and a conference and a lot of other things. But in that webinar, I used a quote from Ted Bunch, who is one of the founders of A Call to Men. And he said that one of the things that is happening right now is that men are being held accountable for some of the things that they've always been able to get away with. They've never been held accountable for sexual harassment, for rape, and, things of that nature. And, it's evidenced by the amount of people who report their sexual assaults and domestic violence, and, how many are able to actually just walk away with little time compared to the fact that survivors like myself have to kind of live with those repercussions of the violence for, pretty much the rest of our lives. And so when I read that, I thought to myself, times are changing. It is painful for a person like myself to watch what's going on in the news, social media, things of that nature, as I'm sure it's painful for a lot of other survivors. And I will say that we are witnessing, we are giving birth to a whole new generation who are saying, we are not having this. We are not having this. We have survivors of all generations who are stepping forward, where before in previous generations, it was unheard of. Victim blaming, what we call victim blaming now, if you imagine people who were just coming off of slavery and Jim Crow and, all different sorts of movements and eras where each generation had their fight, and this is our fight. And so I'm a community activist at heart, and I'm pretty excited about the idea that there are so many brave voices who are giving recognition to the experiences that they've had, who are putting their lives on the line and saying, hey, look, this happened to me. I'm not afraid to say that this happened to me. And we are a country we're not going to accept this anymore. And so I am so excited. As you mentioned in my bio, I work with young people, and I am so excited for what this means for our young people. They are seeing that we don't have to accept this. And I don't know. It's so much for me, and it's probably unprofessional. I don't know, but I am so excited that they see us standing up for our own dignity and humanity, right? Like it's one thing for an advocate to say, hey, she deserves better, but it's something different for us to say, hey, I deserve better. I deserve my story to be heard. So we are blazing the trail for young people and people who are on the margins everywhere to say, look, I don't know about you, but I'm ready. And so my one thing is to stay ready, because we are on the verge of something extraordinary that is happening, that is shifting our country, our environment, our lives, our inner circles. We are shifting as a community, and this is so exciting. And my one thing is to keep it going, keep the momentum going. Continue to spread awareness around how violence impacts us, right? Continue to be that voice. Continue to stand and know that we are making a difference, whether we see it or not. Sometimes we're planting seeds and we may never see that tree grow, but other times we can see that tree grow in small ways. And I truly believe that if we look closely, we'll see those ways that we are impacting our environment. So I just encourage you all to also look, and I'm an advocate, so I never follow the rules. I'm sure you all agree and can. We create our own rules. So I have another thing. Just make sure you look for those happy moments, those ways that we're influencing, even when it seems like things aren't changing. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to even be on this call, and let's just keep it going. Let's just keep it going, because we have generations of young people who are looking to us for guidance, for leadership, and it's on us. We've got to make it happen. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. So stay ready and keep it going. All right. So now, we'll, on behalf of the Dollicia F. Holloway Memorial Foundation, let's welcome Keith Burgess. He is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director, who will now lead us in a universal prayer and moment of silence for all who have lost their lives to domestic violence and sexual violence. Keith?
Yes. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on this call. I'm honored and I'm humbled to be amongst such great leadership. And right now, I would like for all of us to pause today and to remember those who have not survived the violence inflicted upon them. And let us also take a moment to just kind of call out their names in our hearts and minds. And let us also remember the leaders of our movement who have passed and transitioned from earthly labor to heavenly reward. And for those whose shoulders we stand upon, let us just remember them in our hearts just for a moment. Let us just bow our heads wherever you are, and let us just have a brief moment of meditation. All-knowing and all-wise God, the Holy One of life and of love, we honor you today for this national call of unity. And we thank you, Lord, for everyone that has come together and has assembled on this call and everyone who is near and abroad. We just want to give thanks for allowing us the opportunity and the privilege to come and to share in this momentous occasion for the purpose as we come together as advocates, as leaders, as community leaders, to come to eradicate sexual and domestic violence and terror everywhere. But before we petition you, we just want to give thanks for the day and for the opportunity for allowing all of us to join our voices together in unity for this common purpose. Lord, we want to give you thanks for all who have worked together every day to set women and children free from all forms of violence. Lord, we want to thank you for allowing every survivor who has found their way out of violence and on a path of healing. We also want to give you thanks for the leadership that has emerged among us with bringing fresh ideas and new approaches and a new energy to this work. We ask, Lord, that you grant us the wisdom to recognize stumbling blocks for what they are and creativity and to maneuver our ways out of them. We ask that you open our eyes to those things that we see violence against women and children as an inevitable outcome of the world in which we live. Let them hear the cries of these that are in need and widen their hearts to hold the many of those faces in the world and beyond those demands of our unending support. We ask, God, that you call forth compassionate words of change from their mouths and commitment to acts of justice and to transformation from their very hands. O Spirit of all that is sacred, whom we all know by many, many names, we ask, dear, that you remind us of our common purpose and to even help us even when we struggle with one another. Strengthen us for the journey, O God, and that our resolve to be the voice of the voiceless and allow us, God, going forward to speak truth to power. Remind us every day, God, that of our vision of the day that the violence against women is a rare occurrence. But God, we ask that you allow your spirit to call upon us in peace and in justice and in healing and in wholeness. Be with us throughout this year and ahead so that we'll be able to face and be able to withstand the new challenges that are brought before us. And Lord, as I close, we just ask that you just sustain our anger and our courage and the sources of our hope. And we ask this in your matchless, marvelous, and majestic name. And everyone who has a heart, please say amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Keith.
Bless you. Bless you.
So as we continue in our call, we'll think about healing, peace, wholeness, love. And we'll welcome our next speaker, Tara Woodlee. Mama Tara, I like that, as many call her, is a survivor of domestic violence. Tara is the founder of Ashleigh Patience Project and organization that was born after the loss of her beautiful daughter, Ashleigh, to domestic violence. She is the president of the board of directors and acting treasurer for Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, a national nonprofit organization led by survivor volunteers who serve victims, survivors, and families affected by domestic violence. Mama Tara.
Thank you. You can hear me good?
Yes.
Okay. I am so honored to be on this call. It's a truly amazing thing from the perspective of a mother who gets to talk about her child, especially when you lose a child. And losing a child to domestic violence is probably the worst thing that anyone can ever happen to them, especially when you come away, you're a survivor. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and my daughter wasn't. And my firstborn granddaughter wasn't, because my daughter was 4 months pregnant with that child when she was killed. And, you know, my one thing that I want everyone to know, you know, that it's, that you don't have to feel trapped and you don't have to feel alone. And what I wanted to share with everybody was a poem that my daughter Ashleigh had written. She wrote it her 10th grade year of high school after I had left my abusive ex-husband that was her biological father. And she actually submitted the poem, and it was published by the American Poet Society. And I didn't realize how much it had affected her, the violence that went on in my own situation, until I had read this poem about her feelings of, you know, being a child watching that kind of situation. It's called Trapped in This Place. Trapped in this place, no reason why. Trapped in this place, confined until we die. Trapped in this place, so lost and confused. Trapped in this place where everyone feels so used. Trapped in this place where no one can contain. Trapped in this place, the tears that fall like rain. Trapped in this place where because of sin, we are trapped in this place, we are consumed by pain within. Trapped in this place, no one cares if we cry. Trapped in this place where it is acceptable to lie. Those were some pretty powerful words then when I read them. And she talked to me about her feelings. They're even more powerful now that I look back at this, and there's a generation of women who feel this way. That's part of why they call me Mama Tara, because I have dedicated myself in the work that I do to be a mentor and an example, not just share my daughter's story and her legacy of survival and how you can live beyond the violence. You know, it's an experience that people don't realize that families, once you have lost a child to domestic violence, very much in their grief get treated just as bad as survivors do. They are often told to be silent, to keep quiet, to move on, and it adds insult to injury. So I'm just very grateful in the work that I do to advocate not just for survivors, but for those victims' families to know that you don't have to be quiet, you don't have to be trapped, that there are ways to get out and survive this and be strong and be better for it and create legacies for those who have not been able to escape. So that's what Ashleigh's Patience Project is dedicated to, and Break the Silence. And we are just so grateful to join so many people out there. The more people who get involved, the better advocates and the more unified we are. And I'm grateful and honored. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right, so let's welcome our next speaker, Patti Tototzintle. Patti serves as the Chief Executive Officer for Casa de Esperanza, whose mission is to mobilize Latinas and Latino communities to end domestic violence. Patti oversees all organizational programming, internal operations, local collaborations and partnerships, and board and staff leadership development. With more than 25 years of experience in community development and nonprofit management, Patti is highly regarded nationally as an organizational and leadership development trainer and consultant. Welcome, Patti.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues that are on this call with me for your words and inspiration. First of all, I do want to thank all of you on this call for what you do each and every day to support the individuals, the families that you work with, for your ongoing advocacy and leadership, and to ensure that their voices and experiences are heard front and center. At the same time, I know we must also consider the challenges and the environmental realities that is also front and center and impacting your work, everyone's work, impacting the lives of those that you work with, but also affecting your own self-care, your spirit and your optimism, your concerns for how we keep moving forward. But we do. I have no doubt that you have participants, young and old, that have been triggered or re-triggered recently. It is understandable. If you, your friends, and colleagues have been triggered or re-triggered recently, that is also understandable. I have been triggered and have had to talk through some of my own experiences this past week, and it helps. While we would all hope that everyone in need of advocacy is reached and supported, we can't forget the toll that it takes on all advocates, on your colleagues and on organizations that may be already operating on overload for different reasons. We are all also operating on hope and patience that is sometimes wearing thin due to the public disregard of the realities of individuals that have experienced abuse, the challenges and pain facing our immigrant communities, my community and other communities of color, Native communities, and individuals that have been or are being trafficked, and so many more. This is part of the seriousness of our time, but it's not the first time, nor likely will it be the last time that we all face such harsh realities. But we must believe that we are making a difference, that we are having an impact, that there really is hope. There are many that believe and support the work you do, and we cannot forget that. And even though it doesn't always feel like it, the Me Too movement has made a difference. The number one thing for us as an organization is to focus throughout this month in engaging communities, local and national, and we are doing different things every week of this month. For me, it's twofold. I want to focus on celebrating our work while we also focus on self-care. Now is the time to remind ourselves why we do this work and to recognize all the gratitude, the thank yous, the hugs, the love you have heard and received over this past year from the individuals or the families you have worked with, from your colleagues, from others who have seen the impact of your work. Celebrate those moments with your colleagues. Hold each other up, because that helps you get through the tough times, the times you feel you want to do more but aren't sure what else to do. On top of it all, pay attention to your own self-care. All of us in leadership, including myself, need to do a better job within our organizations to pay attention to this. But at the end of the day, organizations can only do so much. And we can always think with our staff, though, on what that looks like. But how do you find a balance to help offset the stress, the frustration, the unfairness facing the individuals that you work to assist each and every day. What does that look like? Who is your support network? What makes you happy? I like to use a phrase that what makes you sing, literally, but also figuratively. I'm not a great singer, but I do like to sing. And there are songs and music that I love that I don't always listen to. So that's one of my goals, is to listen to the music that makes me sing. But also other things make me sing. Singing is about, what do you wake up each morning feeling like? How do you go to bed each day? How do you decompress? So treat yourself to a new song or an old song that you haven't heard in a long time. Read a great book, listen to a great book, get a treatment, whether that's facial, a chiropractic treatment, which many of us don't do, but we should, or an acupuncture treatment, which I do and I'm doing regularly now. Buy something, fix something, exercise, try Tai Chi, try Zumba or some other fun movement, or do nothing. Sleep more, take some rest, but most of all, don't forget to breathe. Breathe intentionally. Take a few minutes a couple of times a day to intentionally stop and breathe. Listen to your breath, close your eyes, and pay attention to that moment of refreshment. Balancing our work and family and community and personal lives is not easy. Ask for the support you need. Give yourself permission to be the best you can be, but you don't have to seek perfection. None of us is perfect. If we were, we would have nothing else to move forward to. I asked our advocates for some words that they would have liked to hear today. So here's from one of our advocates. Sometimes it may feel like you aren't making an impact or aren't making a difference in people's lives, but you are. Every little piece that you put into your work influences and makes a difference in victims and survivors' lives. Trust yourself and give as much of yourself as you can, but also know your limits and know that there is only so much that you can do. Invest in and practice self-care, whatever that means to you. You are here for a reason, and know that there are victories in even the smaller, simple things that victims and survivors choose to do for themselves. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves and celebrate not only the big things, but the little steps that sometimes we don't realize will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patti. And yes, those little things sometimes are the big things, and those are the little things make life really big. So I want to thank our speakers, our amazing speakers, for your personal stories, for your stories of hope, your stories of inspiration, your stories of strength, your stories of resilience, and your stories of excitement. Annika, your energy, your excitement is contagious, and thank you for that. And for your many one things. You've shared so many one things that could be beneficial to our listeners, and I thank you all for that. As we remain committed to raising awareness about the prevalence and impact of domestic and sexual violence and other forms of gender-based violence, and honoring the invaluable work of everyone on the phone and everyone that's participating in the call, let's also enhance our efforts to stop violence and abuse from happening in the first place by engaging in our communities in a meaningful way to implement strategies intended to interrupt cultural norms and constructs that support them. Transformation becomes possible when individuals, communities, and institutions have access to knowledge and tools for action. We believe that prevention is possible. Annika, you shared that energy and the new generation, and stay ready. And when equipped with heightened levels of awareness and an understanding of concrete actions necessary to get there, social change will and can occur. But we need all of you. Ending and healing from domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence requires the collective voice and power of all of us, you and me, each whose one thing add a valuable and powerful component to transforming our communities. What is your one thing? Our speakers shared several one things. And my one thing is I believe survivors, and I believe survivors every day. An important lesson we have learned from many successful social change movements: individual and system advocacy matters and is a must. Social change does not happen by accident. We need advocates like you to use your stories, as our speakers did, as an inspiration for action. Social change requires collaborative efforts to find, create, and share tools, practices, and strategies that will help us to collectively achieve the transformation we desire. Throughout October, NRCDV will host a variety of activities and events that will highlight the value of individuals' one things. Survivors and advocates will share their personal stories of resilience and strength and hope and their one thing that inspired them to do this work. Please visit our DVAP webpage to access the newly published One Thing Action Guide that contains tips, tools, and resources for incorporating your one message, many of the one messages that you've heard today, in your awareness and prevention efforts during Domestic Violence Awareness Month and all year long. The work continues after October. We plant seeds in October, and we watch our fruits come to fruition after October. Maybe, like Annika said, it may take years, but let's be committed to planting those seeds in October. The webpage is nrcdv.org/DVAM. In closing, as we continue this journey together, with so many tragedies and heartbreaks happening around us, near and far, while you continue to work tirelessly to support survivors and their loved ones, and diligently work towards creating safer and healthier communities, please remember, like Patti said, to also take good care of yourself. The fact is you cannot pour from an empty cup. Audre Lorde, feminist and civil rights activist, said it best: caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Pay close attention to your own well-being and healing journey, and reach out for support and help as needed. Also, remember to provide lots of support and love to your peers and colleagues. One of Dr. King's most compelling vision is that of a beloved community, a community in which people of different backgrounds recognize that we are all interconnected and that our individual well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others. NRCDV and our collaborative partners stand with those who embrace self-care and community connection as necessary and powerful for social change. To all survivors, you are not alone, and we believe you. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is a resource for support that is available 24/7, 365. Their telephone number is 1-800-799-7233. You can also explore various ways that they have put in place to communicate with survivors, and this includes a secure online chat option. And to all advocates in need of support and resources, the National Resource Center is available to assist you in any way possible. Feel free to connect with us via email or phone, and it's 1-800-537-2238. Our email address, nrcdvta@nrcdv.org. Again, thank you to everyone that joined the call today and to all who may listen at a later date. We appreciate you and all that you do on behalf of all survivors and their loved ones. And a big thank you to our DVAP advisory group and all of our partnering organizations. Have a great week and an inspiring DVAM 2018. #DVAM 2018. In peace and love. Thank you.